Hey there. Well, last night I had a little bit of a nightmare and it was really kind of crazy. And, dreams are not to dive into, the meaning of dreams and whatnot, but I have this thing that keeps nagging at me and it's all about, and I've discussed this in another video, but I want to talk about it again because it seems more prevalent and salient to this point in time, probably than any other in my lifetime. Um, when I got out of the army in 1992, there was about, I want to say, about 6 months before I got out. I was still at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and I was getting ready to get out, and I started having this reoccurring dream, and it continued off and on for about 2 years. And it was really kind of crazy. Sometimes it would be the same sequence of events replayed, and sometimes it would be a continuation. And, I've never had any dreams like this before then, and I've never had any like it since then. Nothing where I would love to say that, this was lucid dreaming, but it really wasn't because I felt more like I was simply just watching. And it's kind of crazy because in modern kind of context with, shows that you might see on television today, it was really strange because it was kind of a combination of the movie Red Dawn with, The Walking Dead minus the zombies. And I just keep thinking about it over and over again, and I don't know why. I've not had this dream ever, since then. It's been years, obviously, decades since then. And the way this dream always started out was that I was in New York, and I have no idea why I was in New York, but I was in New York, and I was in dress clothes, so I was, in a suit and tie and stuff. So I was there for, I assume, business. I don't think it was pleasure. And the sequence always starts with some pre-knowledge that something bad is going to happen. And long story short, there is a weapon of mass destruction that's on a tanker that comes into the port of New York. And it's a nuclear weapon. And it's detonated. And somehow, some way, I am like on the edge of this subway track that's, has a little section below ground. And there's this, I want to say, I don't know, 4 foot by 5.5 feet tall metal thing that's right in the middle of the tracks. So there's a track that's coming one way, and there's a track going the other way, and then there's this metal piece that's right in the middle. And I see the flash, right? I see the flash of this going off, and it's before the heat and it's before the shock wave comes through. And I managed to, I guess I recognize what's occurring, and so I jump down quite a ways down onto this track, and I didn't break a leg or anything else like that, but it did hurt me to jump down into that subway track, and I got behind this metal piece here, and it was so crazy because I could feel the heat wave come rushing and the shock wave come past me. And it was so intense. It was like, I felt like I was being burned alive. But I was okay. And I took a piece of my shirt or jacket and ripped it off. And then I covered my mouth and, tried to make a filter so much, because of, the radiation. And this dream follows me trying to get back to what I assume is the Kansas City area. Um, and it's weird because, there's no, I keep thinking, and this was before I ever had kids. I keep thinking like I have to get back to family. And I know that there's children and things that are involved in this. And I need to get reunited. There's no communication. All communications are down. Cell phones are, useless. Um, and I'm making my way first into Pennsylvania, and I'm into Ohio, and I think I end up in Illinois, and that's pretty much the span of this dream. And along the way, I'm basically having to do, escape and evade type tactics to try to stay unnoticed, unhidden. But there's so much technology that you can't take. Um, there's drones looking for people. There's all these things that are looking for people. And at the time, I didn't know they were, these were drones, because I just assumed that they were small helicopters. That's the way I described them, was small helicopters. And they were just large drones. And not to go on a different tangent, but there's been twice where I have been walking late at night, walking the dogs. A lot of times, like during the summer and stuff like that, I'll walk them late because, I like to avoid other people and other dogs. It's just, when you got small dogs, especially the two I have, they just go bananas for other dogs when they see them. And it's kind of a little bit of a pain in the ass to kind of do that. So I will, kind of walk them, at night. And twice now I've seen, I heard them before I saw them, but these drones that are pretty big, about the size of a golf cart or a go-kart, that flew, right over the tree canopy, pretty low, and was moving. Let me see, what was that be? It was moving north to south. And both times real close to the kind of same area. And I have no idea what those were. It could be test runs for Amazon's delivery stuff. But I have no idea what those are for. I've never seen them since, but I haven't been really walking the dogs at night, and I never see anything like that during the day. So I have no clue what the hell that was. But it's definitely a drone. So anyway, back to my dream. So this dream follows me, and I meet people, and they're begging me to help them. It's very similar to The Walking Dead, and this was long before I ever saw The Walking Dead too. Where you're running into people and they're wanting you to help them, and and you're trying to explain to them, hey, you got to shut the fuck up, quit, just don't talk, and they want to stay with you. And I managed to disarm some people, but it was like the weird thing about it, the reason why I think it nags at me now is because this wasn't a foreign invader. It was implosion of the United States. I mean, yes, there was this attack, but the attack might have been the excuse for martial law. It might have been the excuse for whatever. And I'm not saying that this is, that's what it was some giant conspiracy or something like that. I'm just saying in this dream, this is what I was dealing with. And so, like I said, for roughly 2 years, and it wasn't every night that I would dream this, but it would be, with some frequency. At least I would say within a month, I would have it maybe 4 to 5 times. I would have this dream, and it would either always be one of two things. I would either replay the New York sequence where I'm, jumping down on that subway track, and the whole explosion and all the chaos that went after that, and then me, basically trying to avoid all human contact, still, find shelter, still find food and water, all those things that you would genuinely have to do. I am experiencing those in my dream as I try to track my way, westward across the United States. And, I'm hiding under underpasses and stuff like that, and trying to avoid anywhere where there might be a camera. in this stuff. And, I do run, from whatever forces these are. And it was so weird because now, you look at, and I hate to say this even out loud, but you look at the tactics and kind of the attire of ICE with the, masked face and, kind of mercenary kind of look. That's who was after me that whole time. And, it really fucks with my head when I think about, a lot of the stuff. And, people close to me, kind of think that I overdose on the news headlines. And I had to ask myself, why am I obsessed with staying absolutely current with all the crazy shit that's going on? Am I addicted to it, or, is there some reason for it? And so I had to do a little bit of root cause analysis on asking myself why. And I don't know if you're familiar with, there's one technique that you can do for trying to get to root cause analysis, where you start asking a series of whys. Why am I so, obsessed with staying current with all the crazy shit that's going on? Well, I want to stay informed. Why? Well, in case something occurs that I have to react to. Why? Well, because I, at some point, was dreaming something similar to circumstances that could unfold. Okay, now I'm getting down to the root of what's really behind my obsession with this. And the obsession behind it, because I lived through, in my sleep, this really traumatic event that was just total collapse. And I think what I concluded was, I'm looking for some sign that collapse is going to occur. And so I can react and, do whatever. And that's really bizarre. That's not I don't feel like that's a really healthy way to live. Because it seems really pessimistic. And if you know me, you know that that's not really who I am. I'm pretty optimistic. I believe in peace, love, and pursuit of happiness. I'm the type that, I don't care what you believe, who you love. Just don't trespass on other people. And, I'm here, to let you know I don't want anybody to trespass on you either. So, society has gone to this, at least in the United States, is, so divided right now. And God, I could go on forever about how I believe this has occurred, and how I do not believe it's by chance. So it seems like there's a march towards this state that I was experiencing in this dream. And for the life of me, it just nags at me on a continuum. Yeah, I really don't know what to think. I never did, there was no conclusion to that dream. It just, I think when it stopped, one, I asked for it to stop. I prayed that, I was like, this, because it really seemed like, I wouldn't say torture, but it seemed so traumatic. I would wake up, in this, sweat, nightly from, this really, this experience of, trying to stay hidden, and trying to find food, and trying to find water, and, trying to find equipment, so I could test the air, trying to test water and stuff like that. So all of this was, these series of, I would do like these little mini raids to try to find stuff. And yeah, I had to defend myself. And it was just really kind of crazy. And there was I never knew who the enemy really was, it was never clear because communication was down, and I wasn't about to try to, tap into, you know, everything. And this was really, the internet was still, in its early development at the time, and wasn't like that. I didn't think through all these things. I never saw a cell phone, in any of these things because at the time I didn't really have that. And so, yeah, it was kind of this just crazy, crazy thing of trekking and a lot of wilderness, a lot of forest, a lot of, you know, I managed to get my hands on a ghillie suit. I don't know if you know what that is, but I managed to get that, and that helped with the escape and evade uh, portion of that. But anyway, yeah, I woke up today after having this dream in which I watched one of my dogs get ran over, and yeah, it really rattled me when I woke up from that because yeah, I love my two dogs, but, quite a bit, and um, yeah, I would just be devastated if anything ever happened to them like that. So anyway, there's that. I'm curious, has anything like that? Have you ever had a reoccurring dream or a continuation dream? I can't be the only one that's experienced something like this. I know you're out there. I know you're out there somewhere. I would love to. I would love to hear if anything like that's ever happened to you. Let me know. Peace.